Hello again, Jim Dowson here, your guest presenter with the Daily Templar Report. How are yous all? God bless each and every one of yous. I'll just get the screen moved round to me so I can start reading all your stuff out and see how yous get on. Well, listen, first of all, I want to tell you we've got a special guest on today, Mr. Griffin. Are you there, Mr. Griffin? Sorry. Yeah, good stuff. I'll come back to you in a minute, Mr. Griffin. I'm just going to go through a couple of wee things from yesterday. Now, I've got to thank yous all on behalf of Jada. Jada was on yesterday, as you know, and she needed a wee bit of help. Well, as usual, you guys and ladies responded fantastically. Quite incredible the response that we got, and I know what you've been worked hard recently with all this building stuff and all that, but what an incredible response. And on behalf of the Templar order here, I would like to thank you very much. On behalf of the Grand Priory, I would also have been told to thank you very much. And more than all, on behalf of Miss Franson, I've been told lots of love and kisses, but I'm not doing the actions. So, but she sends her very humble and heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you. You are the best, bar none, and I am so proud to be associated with you. So thank you for that yesterday. Absolutely first class, sterling job, well done. In fact, I just wanted to thank a few folk in particular. I mean, everybody's done very well, but not just about the Jada thing, but also about the Priory appeal. People are really getting into this now. I think they realise this is real. They're seeing the stones and all that getting up in the windows. They're knowing it's real. This is real now, and people are getting excited. You know, we've got Bruce Campbell, we've got Mr. Haney. God bless you, Mr. Haney. We've got Dan Garrett and Randy Malaspina. Just a couple out of the many people, because I think I'd forgot to mention some of them. Well, every single person who's getting involved with helping the Templars these days, whether it's through Jada Franson, the Donard Chapter House, the Magdalen Chapel for the Legions of the Dead. God bless you. You're doing great. And it's encouraging us because we're under pressure, serious pressure to get this done, and we're having to dodge these lockdown things because they're becoming insane. And we just found out 10 minutes ago before we come on air, the Facebook are now even blocking links. So if you have a personal Facebook account, even if you try and send a link to your friend privately, not on your page, just privately, the link's blocked. Goes against community standards. Somebody was just sending a link to the church to somebody else, and they blocked him under community standards. So they say, if you think this is wrong, that it shouldn't go against our community standards, tell us. So try and send a church link and then ask them why, what on earth community standard does this infringe? It's a link to the building of a church. You tell us, what community standard is that possibly breaching? So, just getting good grief, really. Just getting a bit of breaking news there. Man beheaded near a school in Paris, been treated as a terror attack. Oh, dear God, help us with these things. So a man beheaded in Paris. I wonder who done that. Do you think it was the Jehovah's Witnesses? Maybe a bunch of crazed Mormons? Quakers on the rampage? I don't think so. So we're now streaming on VK, YouTube and Pods.tv. It's all been happening, folks. So we're absolutely wild. We like to push ourselves. So not only have we got a huge building project on the go that's insane, completely out with our remit really. We're also building platforms. We're also getting other stuff organised. We have books, new book launch, and all the rest of it. We don't mess about, but I think we may have took on a lot, but we'll get through it because you're getting us through it. So okay, let me just check. Can you scroll up, brother? I go through these people and thank them all for tuning in. There's too many in. Listen, I hope you don't mind today. Would anybody mind if I just missed this out today? I thank everybody. You know who you are. You're all in the theatre. There's loads in. I won't be able to get through it, and we've got Mr. Griffin. I don't want to eat any of his time. So without further ado, just let me read a bit of scripture, then we'll bring Mr. Griffin in. Okay? Are you okay with that? It's not because disrespectful. Time's killing us. Okay, Proverbs 12. I'm going to read from verse 15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkeneth unto counsel is wise. A fool's wrath is presently known, but a prudent man covereth shame. He that speaketh truth showeth forth righteousness, but a false witness deceit. Yep, very wise words indeed. Yep, fools are always right in their own eyes, never anybody else's. So it's always good to take wise counsel and That's what the reality is. So may God bless this, the public reading of his infallible, inerrant and inspired word. Right, we're going to bring Mr. Griffin in right now. Mr. Griffin, are you there? And what do you want to tell us today?
I am here, Jim. As you know, very often I provide some reasonably wise counsel, but that's not what I'm here for today. I'm here to carry on with the discussion about the promotion by various dark forces of radical crazed Islamists, almost certainly of the kind who's just been beheading someone in Paris tonight, the City of Light. One of the great, it's a jewel of the whole of Christendom, Paris, and this is what's going on. So in the first part of this, Jim, you remember that I talked about the dark forces behind the Armenian genocide, and I said that there were a lot of parallels between that 100 years ago and what's been going on with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. In the second part of this discussion, I focused primarily on the role of the Zionist government and Zionist lobbies of Israel in this. But today, third part, I want to move on to the next, which in this really, the main villain of the piece is no one except Barack Obama and his regime. So I'll get into that. So we start off in 2013, as I mentioned last time. This was when Obama, after a little bit of initial reticence, sanctioned Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the biggest gun-running operation in the whole of human history, bar none. It was done through the US Military Operations Command. They provided assault rifles, mortars, RPGs, anti-tank weapons, night vision goggles, pickup trucks, and all sorts of other weaponry to Syrian rebel forces. Most of this was bought in the Balkans or in Eastern Europe, was then flown to Jordan and Turkey, and in both places you had CIA-funded mainly American paramilitaries training the Syrian rebels. As a matter of fact, very few were Syrians. The Syrian uprising wasn't Syrian at all. Jihadis from 80 different countries were shipped into Syria to attack its democratically elected and tolerant government, and especially the Christian minority who were there. Now, what happened as a result didn't need hindsight, didn't need to wait for the benefit of hindsight to see what was going on, because the Obama regime had already created a disaster doing exactly the same thing in Libya even before Operation Timber Sycamore. And I look here at a report which I found on December the 5th, 2012, the New York Times. Headline, US approved arms for Libya rebels fell into jihadis' hands. And I quote, the Obama administration secretly gave its blessing to arms shipments to Libyan rebels from Qatar last year, but American officials later grew alarmed as evidence grew that Qatar was turning some of the weapons over to Islamic militants. Now, this wasn't just a few old AK-47s. The BBC reported on the 14th of June 2014 that the UN Security Council's Weapons Observation Group had said that there'd been illicit transfers of, quote, heavy and light weapons, including man-portable air defence systems, small arms and related ammunition, and explosives and mines, unquote. Now, you can imagine the potential disaster, quite apart from the fact it tore Libya apart and handed it over to Islamists, so that now it's a cauldron of Islamist fanaticism. It's created things such as the Manchester bombing in Britain, and of course it means that there's literally millions of Africans and Arabs pouring through Libya, with the money for the people smuggling going to fund further jihadi operations and invading Europe. So that's what happened the first time Obama and co started doing this. It was obvious what was going to happen next. And can you imagine the potential, what's going to happen in due course when one of those surface-to-air shoulder-launched missiles is used somewhere near, or possibly more than one, somewhere near a civilian airport, once we get back to flying again sometime in the future. That's a piece of blowback, Jim, that's just waiting to happen. Before we go on to the main part and back to Syria, do you want to come in with anything?
No, carry on, sir.
Okay, right then. So if we can have the picture of the first...
Oh, hold on a second.
This is Hillary Clinton, who was not a victim, she was the perpetrator. She's gone. Bring her back. She's vanished.
Audio issues.
What's happening?
Wait a wee minute. I think we've lost your audio.
Back, isn't that wonderful? The Secretary of State and the perpetrator. No, she's gone again. At least I can't see her. And the first victim seen there with her was John Christopher Stevens, who was the US ambassador to Libya, who was murdered by Islamist rebels when the special mission in Benghazi was overrun by members of Ansar al-Sharia on September the 11th, 2012. And Ansar al-Sharia, of course, was a direct affiliate of Al-Qaeda. So here you're looking at Hillary Clinton with the first victim of the gun running operation, in which she played an absolutely crucial part on behalf of Barack Obama and the American deep state. Now, when tasked over this, Clinton and all the others have said, oh, we were trying to arm the moderates, the moderate rebels, the Free Syrian Army, the moderates, on which I found a report, very good report, March the 16th, 2013. A man called Aaron Lund in Syria Comment produced a very long and well-referenced document in which he said, well, the simple headline was, the Free Syrian Army doesn't exist. And he explained why. There were various groups that may be called the Free Syrian Army or part of it, or use the name as a flag of convenience. But he pointed out, very, very detailed way, the fact that this thing has always been a front for radical Islamist extremists. And it's important to note that Lund is a leftist. He's anti-Assad. He was saying this basically through gritted teeth. He's saying, you've got to tell the truth. When they talk about arming the moderates, there should be some, but there aren't any. And that was known a long, long time ago. If we have picture number 2, this is some of the so-called moderates, and there's hundreds of these sort of pictures available even now, despite the purge on the internet, where on one side of you see the same individuals in different guises. You see them as hardcore Islamists. You'll also see a lot of these men dressed up as white helmets, supposed humanitarians. And on the top right of that picture, you'll see men who are supposedly members or are members of the white helmets, with a little boy who they later beheaded publicly. So these are the sort of people. Keep that picture up for a little while. So while I go on to the next bit, that in January 2015, the Iranian news agency quoted an Iranian general and various Iraqi MPs saying that the US has continued, so this is into 2015, to support ISIS with airdrops of weapons and supplies. And a commander of Iran's Basra force actually called the US embassy in Baghdad the command center for ISIS in the country. Now, drop the picture there perhaps, if the Obama regime had said, no, this is all lies, and produced it as evidence as lies, you could put that down as Iranian propaganda. The Iranians and the American elite don't get on. But America's response wasn't to deny these reports, but to simply say, no, where arms have reached ISIS, this was simply by mistake, because the supplies were meant to reach the Kurds. Now, as a matter of fact, some of the arms that the Americans dropped have indeed, and the British as well, by the way. Britain's involved in this shambles as well. So some of the weapons that were dropped to the Kurds did reach the Kurds. I came across a document from the Conflict Armament Research, a whole document about the weapons deployed by ISIS forces in Syria, and they've had a team working alongside the Kurds to document the huge amounts of ISIS weapons, which were supplied by the USA from Eastern Europe, which the Kurds have taken off ISIS. Before we get back into the ISIS issue, let's have a little look for a minute, Jim, at the Kurds. I know you've mentioned them before in terms of these are not the good guys. So let's have a picture of some of the fighters with the Kurds. Here you have Europeans and Americans, members of Antifa, hundreds of whom have been fighting with the Kurds against ISIS. And ISIS, incidentally, aren't that good. When they're up against tough fighters, they're completely hopeless, except when they're backed by someone else's air force, whether it's Britain's or America's or Israel's. They're really not that good. And even this bunch have managed to take them on, and the Kurds fought them to a standstill. But in doing so, the American deep state, which has helped that, has gone about giving weapons training and combat experience, and serious combat experience for that matter, to people like these who are hardcore leftists. Britain's even a whole brigade of Brits. They call themselves the Bob Crow Brigade, after the very left-wing leader of one of the rail unions who died a few years ago. And these people have received weapons training by the hundred, if not the thousand. And when the future civil war in the United States, potentially only a few weeks away, and in Europe a little bit further down the line, when those civil wars break out, and when people find that the hard left aren't just a bunch of silly, stupid crackpots, but have actually got training them and guiding them men with vast amounts of real combat experience, that'll be another piece of blowback which results from this. The Kurds are not good, decent Christian or even Muslim freedom fighters. These people are hardcore Marxists and crazed feminists. I don't know if I think you mentioned it, Jim, in the past, but when they took back that big Kurdish city, which had fallen for a while, the very first thing that these so-called freedom fighters did, these so-called nationalists, yet again, fake nationalists did, the first thing they did was to organise a pro-abortion rally. So, having taken over a city where hundreds, if not thousands of people have been murdered by ISIS with Western-supplied weapons, the first thing they did was to encourage their women to murder even more of their babies. Yeah. Now, coming on, in a little bit more documentary evidence, 17th of June 2014, WND produced a headline, Blowback, US-trained Islamists who joined ISIS. And they explained, and the whole thing quoted a number of officials, particularly from Jordan, saying that large numbers of Syrian rebels who were trained in 2012 by US instructors working from a supposedly secret base in Jordan went on to join ISIS. And again, remember, these aren't some bunch of Muslims just killing other Muslims somewhere a long way away. These are the monsters tearing apart two secular states, in fact, and making a speciality of murdering Christians. Mr. Techie Guy, can we have a picture as a reminder here of ISIS in act of destroying smashing down the cross from the top of a church in Iran and replacing it with their own banner. And as you know, hundreds of the churches they actually took, the most historic ones, they immediately blew to pieces. That's what these people do. So in coming back to this WND report, a high official in the government of the Obama administration, they said, was aware for 2 months that the Al-Qaeda-inspired group that's taken over 2 Iraqi cities and is now threatening Baghdad was also training fighters in Turkey, including next to the US air base at Incirlik in Turkey. A senior Iraqi official actually called Obama, quote, an accomplice, unquote, in the attacks that were going on. The final part of this report said that after training in Turkey, thousands of ISIS fighters went to Iraq by way of Syria to join the effort to establish an Islamic caliphate. Now, this was not some kind of accident, it's a long-term plan. A lot of our American audience especially will be aware of this fantastic work done by the Operation Judicial Watch. But one of the things that Judicial Watch came up with in 2015, they published a leaked CIA report on the question of the caliphate. And this was also covered in The Guardian in June 2015. I'll quote a bit from The Guardian. A recently declassified secret US intelligence report. Oh, let's have the picture. Sorry, The Guardian, techie guy. Now the truth emerges how the US fueled the rise of ISIS in Syria and Iraq. And it talks about the intelligence report written in August 2012, which predicted and welcomed the creation of what they called a Salafist principality in eastern Syria and an Al-Qaeda-controlled Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. In stark contrast to Western claims at the time, the Defense Intelligence Agency document identifies Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which later became ISIS, and Salafists as, quote, the major forces driving the insurgency in Syria. And it states that Western countries, the Gulf states and Turkey were supporting the opposition's efforts to take control of eastern Syria, which of course is what they did. This report raised the possibility, or said it's predicted that there was going to be a declared Salafist principality. And the Pentagon report went on to say, quote, this is really important, this is exactly what the supporting powers to the opposition want in order to isolate the Syrian regime. That's it. So, a year into the Syrian rebellion, the US and its allies weren't just supporting the opposition that they knew was dominated by extremist Islamists. They were prepared actually to countenance, and they said it's going to be a good thing when they establish an Islamic state in Syria and Iraq, which of course exactly what they did. Just about finished here now. I'm warning here, Jim, for you to get ready with your closing bits. The author of this Guardian report accused the Western powers in the end of his very detailed article of incubating the ISIS virus. And again, remember, that's just what the same kind of people did with Al-Qaeda in the 1980s Afghanistan, against the Russians, and it came back and bit them very severely, and many, 2,000 innocent Americans, when possibly not alone, but certainly without a doubt involved, these Islamist monsters took down to the Twin Towers. Quite while the third fell when it hadn't been hit by a plane, that's a different story. But they were certainly involved in this, just as it was blowback directly from what David Cameron did in Libya that caused the Manchester Arena bombing. So we've seen it happen there. Just as we go back further in time, we saw in the first section of this report how it happened with the Young Turks in Turkey and led directly to the Armenian genocide, the murder of 2 million Christians, just as the British intelligence forces did in the 19th century when they deliberately promoted and exported the Salafist cancer, which created Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia, and the Deobandi sect in India, which is what led directly to the slaughter of about 2 million people when India fell apart in 1948, and still turns large parts, especially of rural Pakistan, into hotbeds for future Islamist extremism. And guess where virtually all the Pakistani ghettos in all the towns and cities in Britain come from? Those same parts of rural Pakistan. So it's going to come back and bite us again and again and again. That's it for me today, because there's a lot more of this to go on. In fact, there's one more element, one more section of this. So next time, Jim, perhaps early next week, if we've got space, I'll come on and talk more about how the deep state were not only armed and aided ISIS, but how they've been behind them in many other ways as well. How some Green Berets quietly were so horrified by what they were being told to do in Jordan that they deliberately sabotaged the operation to train these people. I'll also look at what Donald Trump did, to the extent, very major extent, that he did draw a halt to this, and finally look at the post-election prospects, what's going to happen in the future. So that's it for today. I hope it's been interesting, and see you next week.
Thank you, Nick. God bless you. And that was a most informative talk. Thank you, Nick, on behalf of everybody watching. Thank you and God bless you. Just a wee update on the beheading in Paris. This is from the Daily Mail, not us, the Daily Mail, the biggest paper in Britain. Daily Mail says, gunman shouting Allah Akbar beheads a man in northern Paris. He was then shot by the police and is dead. He also had a bomb vest. This is interesting, but the victim was a teacher who had enraged parents by showing pupils pictures of the Prophet Muhammad in a not very nice way and all the rest of it, obviously mocking Islam. And he enraged people, so this guy went in and decapitated the teacher and fled with the weapon. And the picture was shown to kids on a lesson of freedom of expression. Now, I've got to be careful what I say here, because this teacher, God rest him, but he will have been a lefty, a liberal. Now, I'm not saying it's justifiable to go about beheading people, for goodness sake, But this is the problem with the left. They think they can insult everybody, and they normally get away with it, don't they? They can insult Christians all day long, and they do get away with it. We deplatform us, they say this about us, they cancel us, they do all this. Now you can't even share a link on Facebook with even our URL in it, and they get away with it. But they forget, not everybody's the same. And when they try it with the Muslims, it goes bad. So, the whole thing was about the Charlie Hebdo thing. You'd think these liberals would learn by now. You mess with the Muslims' religion, they're going to go for you. It's as simple as that. And this is the plight. This is the plight of the liberal. They are genuinely crazy, and sometimes it gets us killed, and sometimes it gets themselves killed. So we'll wait and see more details in that. But I just want to, on next talk especially, because we had a guy today sent a message in, an actual member, and say, that's it, I'm taking no more to do with the Templars. And I'd been watching a report from 2018 with our Serbian lady, some of you might remember her, our newscaster lady, when she was calling the deep state, serpents and deceivers and all the rest of it. And he took this as an attack on America, on American people. Let me be very clear about this. A lot of our members are from the USA. Most of my best friends in the order, my brothers, are from the USA, especially Texas, Alabama area, and others all over the place. And we're talking to a few. We talk to them every day. We love Americans. My blood kin are American. I'm an Ulster Scot, Scotch-Irish. There's 40 million of my people in America in the southern states, maligned and marginalised. I love them. I'd give my life for them. There is no way the Templar Order would ever attack the American people. But we attack the American deep state, the slime balls who cause all this, Hillary and all her gang of cronies, and the same with the British elites. I don't attack British people no more than I would attack American people, but we attack the elites. Now, me and Mr. Griffin have been in Kosovo. That was a Christian country, sacred and holy to the Serbs, where they lost a half of their population halting the Ottoman advance into Europe. And without that sacrifice, none of us would be here, including Americans. None of us would be here. There would be no Western world. They bled themselves white to save Europe. They knew they couldn't win, but they just wanted to hold up the Ottoman, the Sultan's army, which they did. And Britain and America bombed the Christians. So the Albanian Muslims would win that conflict and take that land. Now, me and Mr. Griffin have been there. And when you drive through these Kosovan Islamic towns, and Mr. Griffin can testify to this, there are banners on the mosques, God bless America. There are stars and stripes everywhere, because the only contact they've had with America are their fighter planes and troops helping them to defeat Christian Serbs.
Jim, can I come in for a moment there? Yeah, just a reminder that as well as these giant modern prefabricated mosques, and there's usually two to each village, every single church is shut and bolted, if not actually destroyed, and every single Christian graveyard that we passed, all the graves, every single cross was desecrated and smashed. And these are the same people, as you say, in the entrance to every village. There's a big banner over the top saying, "Thank you, America, God bless America," and all the rest of it. But that's not America. It's the deep state. The very first victims of the British deep state actually were not just the Irish and the Welsh and the Scots, but also the English people who were robbed of our common lands by the super rich. And the very first victims of the American super money power and so on, apart from the Indians, were primarily the people of the southern states of the USA in the war between the states. And the monster, it's Masonic, it's all sorts of evil things. The monster in charge of MI6, the CIA, and all the rest of it, it has no time for and no purpose for either the British people or the Americans. It hates us as much as it hates anybody else. And we're only there, only any possible use, if we can make money for them, pay money for their wars, or send our sons and nowadays our daughters to fight and die in their wars. And attacking them is certainly not attacking either the Brits or the Americans.
So if the guys who I'm referring to, I don't want to mention his name, if he's watching this now, catch yourself on, sir. Give your head a shake. Yeah. We defend our people all over the world, putting our lives at risk. If you honestly think that a report about the deep state monsters and attacking American people, you're crazy and you shouldn't be a Templar. But if you're a sensible man, you're going to rethink it and get yourself sorted out. It's amazing how people get confused. But talking of crosses being destroyed, I want to show people this, and I want to show especially the Americans this. Let's get a techie guy to throw it up. Do you know what that is? That is a 3.5 foot tall, solid brass cross from the last century, well 1890s, founded by, let me see now, wait a minute, founded by the R. Geisler Foundry, Geisler, in New York, founded anywhere between 1850 and 1890. It came out of a monastery in upstate New York, Hudson Valley Monastery. It's a very, very famous brass founder, but we have the chance of getting our hands on that. What do you think? And it ain't thousands of pounds, it's hundreds of dollars. We've got a chance. Now, being a Scot, being an Ulster Scot, I've contacted the people who have it, and I've said, well, you couldn't do us a better deal than that, could you? But with shipping and import tax and all the rest of it, it could still cost $500. But anyway, leave it to me. Don't do anything now. I'm dealing with these people, and Mr. Griffin can tell you I'm like a Jack Russell Terrier. I'll be in amongst them. So I'm putting out to these people's conscience that we would give this a very, very good home. Did you see the mark? Did you have the mark there, brother, of the founder? Yeah, there it's there. This is a piece of Americana, famous Americana. This company, Geisler in New York Foundry, they made all the fancy church stuff for the Catholic cathedrals at Patrick's, New York, and all over the country, all over. They also made stuff for synagogues and all the rest of it, but they're very, very famous. And I think, because a lot of the money for all this stuff here is coming from America, I think this would be very fitting, being in the Magdalene Chapel for the battalions of the dead, the glorious dead. I think it's only fitting that the main item in the chapel is a cross, which is part of American history. It's coming from a monastery in upstate Hudson Valley Monastery in upstate New York, and it was founded in New York about 120 to 140 years ago. I personally think that would be our show of respect to our American brethren. The thing that takes pride of place in the entire building, the entire complex here, is that American solid brass cross. I don't know what it weighs. It must weigh a ton.
It's about 15 kilo.
Aye, it's a lot. But anyway, we can get that for you. But just on that, because we need to go in a minute, I just want to show you that the first outer layer of blocks has went up today on the other side of the chapter house. There you go. That's me standing with them. Now they're going to be up on end that side, and then there's a 4-inch gap, and then there's flat blocks, flat. So the whole wall will be 16 inches thick with a 4-inch cavity, but 16 inches thick. It will withstand an RPG rocket, because you never know, we might have to withstand RPG rockets soon, and that's the way it is. So that's where we are with that. Look at all the blocks are there now. The boys have been plodding away, and we'll get the first parts of the Gothic windows in. There you go. They're just resting until tomorrow. We can get the rest of them in. So it's all happening. There's no messing about now. And we've been able to speed things up because people are being generous and throwing money in. Remember, we do it as quick as we can do it. When the money sort of goes a bit low, we have to sort of slow up a bit. When the money comes pouring in, we can get ripped into it because we can buy all the stuff. You know, we don't get paid, but we can buy the gear that we need to get stuck into it. So again, thank you. God bless each and every one of you. I'm actually really, really happy today. I'm happy because of JD yesterday. I'm happy because some people, very generous people, have made some great donations. I'm happy because God has brought to my attention that piece of superb Americana religious stuff. Real amazing find, that cross. It's just incredible, and I want to try and get that for that priory, because the main thing in the priory then will be an American founded cross of great historical significance, and that's what I think. So what do you think of that, Mr. Griffin?
It's a fantastic piece. It really is. What an amazing
God just
thing to
keeps
find.
doing these things, Nick. You know, finding the monuments in the wall, buried in the wall from the old 11th, 12th century abbey and all this stuff. These things just keep happening. There's no such thing as coincidence. God is with us in this task. And if you're part of this with us, you are blessed, because you will never, ever in your life get an opportunity to be part of something like this. Ever again. I mean, it's incredible. I've got to this age, mid-50s, and never been involved in anything like this. Now, remember, talking about the Purge thing. Thanks very much. Purge thing is coming on. Remember, if you don't see the broadcast after we end, it is available on Purge TV. The only safe place we can host these now. Because remember, even as from today, Facebook are blocking us, even sending links. It's utterly ridiculous. And finally, remember the book. They're going out 10 to a dozen. And we're trying to do all this and get the books out. It is crazy. And we've got a huge shipment of weapons coming in next week. So I don't know what we're going to do. But I might throw a sickie, Mr. Griffin. No, I won't. I'll be here.
Okay, you better rephrase that for starters.
I'll be here.
Oh, dear.
Now, the book, remember the book? Deuce Vault. Look at the lovely cover again. Look at this. Deuce Vault. We've still got some. So if you haven't got any, get some. Don't get one, get two, get three. Give one away as a present for Christmas coming up. What a good present to give to your son, your son-in-law, your brother, your father even. So get them in. And that's all from me. Mr. Griffin, we'll get you back early next week if you don't mind. Next week, folks, we're going to have a guy who runs an organisation called the Suderlands. This is a right-wing conservative Christian South African Farmers Association who are preparing for war. They're very open about it. They're preparing for civil war. And what impresses me with this guy, because, there's not a lot of whites in South Africa and they're going to take on the ANC, they said, we're not preparing to win. We're preparing to die like proud Boers. Can you imagine that, Mr. Griffin? They're preparing to die. They're going to fight it out.
So that's
Brother Ross, yes. So he's going to be on here maybe Monday, Tuesday, I'm not sure. So that's a big hit, and he's coming on the Templar Report. I want everybody to tell their friends about it, and I want everybody to be here. Because when a man, and a serious man, says we're preparing to fight, but we're not preparing to win, we're preparing to die like patriots. What are you going to say? What are you going to say? Well, you'll be able to hear what he wants to say next week. It'll be Monday or Tuesday. We'll give you notice. It might be Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll give you notice. Don't worry. Well, that's all from me again, Mr. Griffin. Thank you ever so much for that wonderful and in-depth talk about the wickedness that's going on behind the scenes. God bless America. God bless Britain. God bless Ireland. God bless Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, and every other country that I haven't mentioned. Okay? So I'll be here on Sunday for the Templar Report, and I'll be back on Monday if the good Lord spares me. Until then, stick close to God. You won't go far wrong. Deuce Vault.